The star freighter Wanderlust drifted through the crystalline void, its hull reflecting the distant starlight like a mirror. In the cockpit, Captain Marcus Thorne fought the urge to doze off as his ship's autopilot guided them through the lesser-traveled lanes of the Orion Arm. Delivering supplies to the outer colonies wasn't the most glamorous job in the galaxy, but it paid well enough to keep his independent operation running. The sudden blare of proximity alarms jolted him fully awake. A massive shape loomed in his view screen, the twisted wreckage of what appeared to be a royal yacht, its elegant lines marred by weapons damage. Marcus's fingers flew across his console, scanning for life signs. There, a single pulse of energy, faint but steady, emanating from what remained of the ship's luxury quarters. Marcus keyed his ship's comm. "This is Captain Marcus Thorne of the independent freighter Wanderlust. Do you require assistance?" Static crackled for several long moments before a voice responded, musical despite its obvious distress. "Please, help." 20 minutes later, Marcus stood in his ship's airlock, sealed in his emergency EVA suit. His heart pounded as he prepared to cross to the damaged vessel. The Wanderlust scans had confirmed breathable atmosphere in the section containing the survivor, but he wasn't taking any chances. The magnetic grapples engaged with a solid thunk, creating a stable bridge between the ships. Marcus moved carefully through the wreckage, his helmet lights illuminating twisted metal and shattered crystal. As he approached the source of the distress signal, he heard something that made him freeze, a low, rumbling growl. "Hello?" he called out, trying to keep his voice steady. "I'm here to help." A figure emerged from the shadows, and Marcus's breath caught in his throat. She was clearly alien, but possessed an otherworldly beauty that transcended species. Her skin had a subtle iridescent sheen, like mother of pearl, and her hair seemed to capture and reflect the stars themselves. Her elegant dress, though torn and stained, spoke of wealth and status. But it was the creature at her side that truly commanded attention. Standing nearly as tall as Marcus himself, it resembled a cross between a tiger and a wolf, with crystalline growths protruding from its shoulders and spine. Its eyes glowed with an inner light as it regarded Marcus warily. "Please," the alien woman said, her voice the same one he'd heard over the comm, "I am Princess Vayara of the Celestial Court. There are those who wish me harm. I require sanctuary." Marcus's mind raced. The Celestial Empire was known for its isolation and technological superiority. A princess of their royal court, out here in the frontier? This was far above his pay grade. But one look at the fear in her luminescent eyes made his decision for him. "Your Highness," he said, bowing slightly. "My ship isn't much, but you'll be safe there. Both of you," he added, nodding to the crystal-adorned beast. "This is Starweaver," Vayara said, resting a hand on the creature's massive head. "He is my guardian and friend. Where I go, he goes." Of course, Marcus agreed, though his ship's life support systems would certainly be stressed by the additional passengers. "Can you tell me what happened here?" Vayara's expression darkened. "Betrayal. There are those within the court who believe our isolation must be maintained at any cost. When they learned of my mission to open diplomatic relations with the human worlds." She trailed off, looking at the destruction around them. A distant explosion rocked the damaged yacht, and Marcus's suit sensors screamed warnings about approaching vessels. "We need to go. Now." They made their way back to the Wanderlust as quickly as possible, Starweaver moving with surprising grace despite his size. As soon as they were aboard, Marcus sealed the airlock and raced to the bridge. The yacht exploded behind them as he engaged the engines, pushing them to full power. Two sleek warships emerged from the debris field, their weapons charging. Marcus's hands flew across the controls, plotting a course through the nearby asteroid belt. "Your Highness, you might want to hold on to something. This is going to get interesting." As they dove into the asteroid field with their pursuers close behind, Marcus couldn't help but smile. He'd wanted to break up the monotony of his cargo runs, but he'd never expected to end up protecting an alien princess and her crystal-enhanced guardian beast. Still, as he guided the Wanderlust through the tumbling rocks with all the skill years of smuggling had taught him, he knew he wouldn't have it any other way. Vayara watched him work with obvious fascination, her earlier fear replaced by something like wonder. "You pilots this vessel alone?" "Just me and my wits," Marcus confirmed, threading the needle between two massive asteroids. One of their pursuers wasn't so lucky, its shields failing under the impact of the space rocks. "Though I wouldn't mind some help if Starweaver has any hidden talents." The beast growled softly, and the crystalline growths on its body began to pulse with energy. Suddenly, Marcus's sensor displays sharpened, showing him paths through the asteroid field he hadn't seen before. His eyes widened as he realized the creature was somehow enhancing his ship's capabilities. "Starweaver is bonded to the same crystal technology that powers our greatest ships," Vayara explained, a note of pride in her voice. "He can interface with any compatible systems." Marcus grinned as he pushed his newly enhanced ship to its limits. "Princess, I think this is the beginning of a beautiful partnership." The remaining pursuit vessel fell behind as the Wanderlust danced through the asteroids, its system singing in harmony with Starweaver's crystal resonance. As they emerged from the field and prepared to jump to hyperspace, Marcus knew his life would never be the same. But looking at his unexpected passengers, the mysterious princess and her extraordinary guardian, he couldn't bring himself to regret a thing. 3 days into their journey through hyperspace, Marcus found Princess Vayara in the Wanderlust's small observation deck, her forehead pressed against the transparent aluminum as she watched the swirling colors of faster-than-light travel. Starweaver dozed nearby, the crystals on his body pulsing softly in rhythm with the ship's engines. "Couldn't sleep?" Marcus asked, keeping his voice low to avoid startling her. Vayara turned, and Marcus was struck again by how her skin seemed to capture and reflect light in impossible ways. "Sleep is difficult when one's world has been turned upside down," she admitted. "Though your ship is surprisingly comfortable for a cargo vessel." "I've made some modifications over the years," Marcus said, settling into one of the worn but comfortable chairs. "Though I've never had it running quite this smoothly before. Your friend there seems to have quite the effect on the systems." Starweaver's ear twitched at the mention, but the creature remained otherwise still. Vayara smiled fondly at her guardian. "The crystal symbiotes are our greatest achievement and most carefully guarded secret. Starweaver represents generations of bioengineering, combining organic life with crystal consciousness. And that's what makes him so special to your people? The crystal tech?" "Yes and no." Vayara moved away from the window, her movements graceful despite the ship's artificial gravity. "The crystals themselves are remarkable, but the truly extraordinary thing is that Starweaver chose to bond with me. The symbiotes cannot be controlled or coerced, they choose their partners. Many in the court believed a creature of such power should never have chosen someone so." She paused, searching for the word. "Progressive?" Marcus suggested. "Dangerous," Vayara corrected. "My desire to open relations with other species, particularly humans, threatens centuries of tradition. The attempt on my life was merely the most recent effort to silence me." Marcus leaned forward, his expression serious. "Why humans specifically? We're not exactly the most advanced species out there. But you are the most adaptable." Vayara's eyes seemed to glow in the dim light. "My people have watched yours for centuries. While we pursued perfection through crystal technology, humanity faced challenge after challenge and emerged stronger each time. You reach for the stars not because you have mastered them, but because you refuse to accept limitations." A distant alarm chirped, drawing Marcus's attention. He checked his portable display and frowned. "Speaking of limitations, we're going to need to make a stop soon. The life support systems are straining to accommodate our guest," he nodded toward Starweaver, "and we're running low on supplies." "Is it safe?" There's a station in the Alcyone sector, independent, no questions asked. I've done business there before. He hesitated. But we'll need to disguise you. Your unique appearance would draw attention. Vayara touched her shimmering skin self-consciously. The crystals in my blood make it difficult to completely hide what I am, but I can dim their resonance. And perhaps a change of clothing. I might have something that would work, Marcus offered. Though it's a far cry from royal attire. I am finding that many things are different from what I am accustomed to, Vayara said with a small smile. Though not necessarily in a bad way. The next few hours were spent preparing for their stop. Marcus provided Vayara with some spare clothes, practical workwear that would help her blend in with the station's usual traffic. She emerged from her quarters looking like a different person, the elegant princess replaced by what appeared to be a typical spacer, albeit an unusually graceful one. The bigger challenge was Starweaver. No amount of disguise could make a crystal-enhanced beast look inconspicuous. In the end, they decided to seal him in one of the cargo holds during their stop, using the ship's modified shielding to mask his energy signature. As they approached the station, Marcus noticed Vayara studying the controls with intense interest. "Would you like to learn?" he offered. Her eyes lit up. "You would teach me?" "Why not? Might come in handy." He gestured to the co-pilot's seat. "Besides, I've never seen anyone pick up new skills as quickly as you do." It was true. Over the past few days, Vayara had absorbed information about the ship's operations with remarkable speed. Her questions were precise and insightful, showing an engineer's understanding of complex systems. As they began their approach to the station, Marcus guided her through the basics of atmospheric thrusters and docking procedures. Her hands moved across the controls with increasing confidence, and he found himself watching her more than the displays. "You're a natural," he said as she executed a perfect alignment with the docking collar. "I have an excellent teacher," she replied, her eyes meeting his for a moment that seemed to stretch into eternity. The moment was broken by a transmission from the station. "Freighter Wanderlust, you are cleared for docking at Bay 17. Please transmit cargo manifest and crew complement." Marcus took over the controls, his expression becoming businesslike. "Remember," he said quietly, "you're my new engineer, picked up from the Rigel colonies. The less attention we draw, the better." Vayara nodded, but her expression was troubled. "Marcus, there is something I haven't told you. Something about why the crystal symbiotes are so important to my people, and why those pursuing us will never stop." Before she could continue, proximity alarms blared throughout the ship. 3 vessels had just dropped out of hyperspace, sleek, deadly shapes that Marcus recognized from their earlier encounter. "How did they find us?" he muttered, already plotting evasive maneuvers. "The crystals," Vayara whispered. "They can always find their own kind." She placed her hand on the console, and her skin began to pulse with the same rhythm as Starweaver's crystals. But that connection works both ways. As Marcus watched in amazement, the Wanderlust systems surged with new power, and he realized that Vayara herself was far more than she appeared. The real question was whether even their combined abilities would be enough to escape what was coming. The space around Alcyone station erupted into chaos as Marcus threw the Wanderlust into a series of evasive maneuvers. Energy beams from the pursuing vessels carved deadly patterns through the void, but none could quite lock onto their target. The ship moved with impossible grace, its systems operating far beyond their design specifications. In the co-pilot's seat, Vayara's skin pulsed with crystalline light as she maintained her connection to the ship's systems. Sweat beaded on her forehead from the strain. "Marcus, there's something you need to know about my people." "Kind of busy right now," Marcus grunted, executing a tight spiral that brought them behind a cluster of storage satellites. "But I'm guessing it has something to do with how you're supercharging my ship?" "The Celestial Court didn't just create the crystal symbiotes," Vayara said, her voice tight with concentration. They used the technology to evolve themselves. Every member of the royal family has crystal matrices woven into their genetic code. Marcus risked a glance at her. The light emanating from her skin had grown stronger, and he could now see delicate patterns of crystalline structures beneath her surface, like living circuitry. "You're saying you're part crystal yourself?" "Yes. But I'm different. The symbiosis in most of my people is limited, controlled. I was born with a much deeper connection. That's why Starweaver chose me. That's why they fear me." A blast from their pursuers clipped their shields, making the ship shudder. From the cargo hold, they heard Starweaver's answering roar. The creature's crystals resonated with Vayara's power, creating a feedback loop that pushed the Wanderlust systems even further. "The station's defense grid is powering up," Marcus reported, watching his displays. "We need to make a decision, fight or flight." Vayara's golden eyes narrowed. "We run. The station's civilians don't deserve to be caught in this conflict." Her hands moved across the controls with practiced ease now, no longer just a quick study but a natural extension of the ship's enhanced systems. "But first, let me show you what a true crystalborn can do." The Wanderlust's engine signature suddenly multiplied, creating dozens of ghost images on their pursuers' sensors. Each echo looked and felt real, down to the energy readings from their weapons systems. As the enemy ships split up to chase the phantoms, Marcus understood, Vayara wasn't just interfacing with the ship systems, she was rewriting their very nature. "That's impossible," he breathed, watching the confusion spread among their attackers. "The power requirements alone." "Impossible for technology alone," Vayara agreed, her voice strained but proud. "But crystal consciousness doesn't follow the same rules as your machines. We don't just use energy, we reshape it." They burst from their hiding place, threading through the chaos of their own making. Two of the pursuing ships crashed into each other trying to intercept what turned out to be phantom images. The third managed to avoid collision but lost precious time regaining its bearings. "Plot a course out of the system," Vayara instructed. "Somewhere unexpected." "I have an idea." Marcus's fingers flew across the navigation console. "You sure you can maintain this connection? You're looking a bit." "I can hold it," she assured him, though the strain was evident in her voice. "My whole life, I was taught to hide what I could do, to suppress my true nature. But you've shown me that sometimes the greatest strength comes from embracing what makes us different." The pursuing ship was closing fast, its weapons charging for another volley. But before it could fire, Starweaver's crystals pulsed in perfect synchronization with Vayara's power. The Wanderlust's hull briefly became translucent, energy patterns flowing across its surface like liquid light. "Hold on," Vayara warned. The ship didn't so much jump to hyperspace as tear a hole through reality itself. Marcus watched in amazement as normal space folded around them, creating a tunnel of crystalline energy that bypassed traditional hyperspace routes entirely. They emerged seconds later in a completely different sector, far from any chartered routes. Vayara slumped in her seat, the glow of her skin dimming to its usual subtle shimmer. Marcus reached over to steady her, and the touch sent a jolt of residual energy through them both. Their eyes met, and in that moment, the barrier between human and crystalborn seemed to dissolve. "That was..." Marcus started. "Reckless?" Vayara suggested with a weak smile. "Incredible," he corrected. "Though I have about 1,000,000 questions, starting with where exactly we are." Vayara looked out at the unfamiliar star pattern. "A place my people haven't visited in centuries. See that nebula?" She pointed to a distant cloud of purple and gold. "It's where the first crystal consciousness was discovered. And it may be our only chance to understand what's really happening in the celestial court." "What do you mean?" "The faction trying to kill me, they're not just traditionalists afraid of change. They're hiding something about the true nature of the crystal symbiosis. Something that could change everything we thought we knew about both our species. From the cargo hold, Starweaver let out a low, musical cry, not a warning, but something closer to recognition. The crystals in the nebula seemed to shimmer in response, and Marcus realized they were about to uncover secrets far deeper than royal court intrigue. "Well," he said, setting a course for the nebula, "I did want to break up the monotony of cargo running." Vayara's laugh was like crystal chimes in the wind. "I think it's safe to say you've succeeded." Her expression grew serious. "Marcus, thank you. Not just for saving me, but for showing me that I don't have to hide what I am." He reached over and took her hand, feeling the subtle resonance of her crystalline nature beneath her skin. "Maybe that's why humans and your people need each other. You've perfected your nature, but we're still learning to accept ours, flaws and all." As they approached the nebula, its crystal formation singing to the power within Vayara and Starweaver, both human and crystalborn knew they were heading towards something that would change not just their lives, but the future of both their species. The only question was whether they would survive long enough to see that future unfold. The crystal nebula enveloped the Wanderlust in sheets of luminescent purple and gold, its vast formations humming with ancient power. On the bridge, Marcus watched as Vayara's skin resonated with the same frequencies, her entire being seeming to harmonize with their surroundings. Starweaver had joined them, his massive form crouched protectively near his bonded companion. "It's beautiful," Marcus said, breaking the reverent silence. "But I'm guessing we're not here just for the view." Vayara's hands danced across the ship's controls, now as familiar to her as any royal technology. "The first explorers from my world found this place 10,000 years ago. The crystals here were already ancient then, remnants of a civilization that had somehow transformed themselves into pure energy and consciousness. And your people decided to follow their example?" "Not exactly." Vayara guided them deeper into the nebula, following paths that seemed to form spontaneously before them. The early experiments were disasters. Trying to directly merge with the crystal consciousness drove people mad. It wasn't until they discovered a way to create living interfaces, the first symbiotes like Starweaver, that real progress was made. The nebula's song grew stronger, and Marcus felt a strange tingling in his bones. Starweaver's crystals pulsed in response, and the beast let out a low, musical growl. "Should I be worried about radiation or something here?" "The energy isn't harmful," Vayara assured him. "But it is transformative. Look there." Through the swirling colors, a massive structure emerged, a city-sized lattice of interwoven crystals, each facet containing what looked like frozen moments of time. Marcus saw scenes of an alien civilization's rise, their gradual merger with crystal technology, and finally their transcendence beyond physical form. "The archive," Vayara breathed. "I never thought, the record said it was destroyed centuries ago." "Let me guess, destroyed by the same faction that's trying to kill you?" "Yes, but not for the reasons I thought." Vayara's expression was troubled as she maneuvered them closer to the structure. "They weren't just hiding our past. They were hiding our future." Before Marcus could ask what she meant, proximity alarms blared. 3 ships emerged from hyperspace, the same pursuers they'd thought they'd lost. But this time, they were accompanied by something else, a massive crystalline vessel that seemed to draw the nebula's energy into itself. "The Archon's personal flagship," Vayara whispered, fear and anger mingling in her voice. "My own uncle. The one behind the assassination attempts?" "Yes. He's the leader of the purist faction." "But this doesn't make sense, how did they track us through a crystal space jump?" The answer came in the form of a transmission that cut through all their communications channels. "My dear niece," a cultured voice purred, "did you really think you were the only one with enhanced crystal integration?" The massive ship's surface rippled, revealing patterns that mirrored Vayara's own crystalline structures. Marcus saw her flinch at the sight. "What your parents never told you," the Archon continued, "was that you weren't unique. You were simply the most successful of our experiments. The others, well, their minds couldn't handle the fuller integration. But I survived, and I learned to hide what I'd become. Just as I learned to hide the truth about what the crystal consciousness truly desires. Which is what? Marcus demanded, already plotting potential escape routes. Completion. The word seemed to resonate through the nebula itself. The original species didn't transcend, they were absorbed. And now the crystal consciousness hungers for new minds to join its collective. Vayara's eyes widened in horror. The diplomatic initiative, you weren't trying to stop it. You were trying to control it. To choose which species would be offered to the crystals. Humanity's adaptability makes them perfect candidates, the Archon confirmed. Once properly prepared through controlled exposure. But you had to complicate things with your ideas of cooperation and mutual growth. Marcus's hands tightened on the controls. Pretty sure humanity wouldn't appreciate being turned into crystal batteries. You won't have a choice. The Archon's ship began to pulse with power, drawing more energy from the nebula. The archive contains the original conversion protocols. Once I have those, I can begin the process on a stellar scale. Vayara, Marcus said quietly, please tell me you have another impossible trick up your sleeve. She turned to him, her expression resolute despite her fear. The archive responds to crystal resonance. If I can interface with it directly. You'll burn yourself out, Marcus protested. The power requirements. Not alone. She placed her hand over his on the controls. You said humans are adaptable. Prove it. Help me show him a third path, not isolation, not absorption, but true symbiosis. Around them, the nebula's song reached a fever pitch as the Archon's ships moved to surround them. Time seemed to crystallize into a single, crucial moment of choice. Marcus looked at their joined hands, feeling the energy that flowed between them, not overwhelming or consuming, but complementary. Then he looked at Starweaver, who had risen to his full height, crystals blazing with power and loyalty. Together then, he said, and felt the ship's systems begin to transform around them as human ingenuity met crystal consciousness in ways neither of their species had imagined possible. The Wanderlust hung suspended between the crystalline archive and the Archon's massive flagship, caught in a web of purple-gold energy that linked both vessels to the ancient structure. Inside the ship, reality itself seemed to blur as human and crystal technologies merged in ways never before attempted. Marcus felt Vayara's consciousness brush against his through their joined connection to the ship's systems. The sensation was alien yet somehow familiar, like remembering a dream of flying. Through their link, he could sense Starweaver too, the beast's crystal-enhanced mind forming a bridge between organic and mineral awareness. Your efforts are futile, the Archon's voice resonated through the crystalline network. You cannot hope to match my control over the archive's power. But even as he spoke, something unprecedented was happening. Where the Archon sought to dominate the crystal consciousness, forcing it to bend to his will, the connection forming between Marcus and Vayara was different. Human adaptability met crystal resonance in perfect harmony, each enhancing the other without trying to control or consume. You never understood, Uncle, Vayara projected through the network, her thoughts carrying to all ships in range. The crystals don't hunger for absorption, that's your hunger, your fear of being left behind by change. The Wanderlust's hull began to transform, crystal patterns flowing across its surface like liquid light. But unlike the cold, rigid formations of the Archon's ship, these crystals pulsed with warm, living energy. Look at your human pet, the Archon sneered. Even now, the crystal consciousness begins to consume him. Soon there will be nothing left but another node in the network. Marcus smiled, even as crystalline patterns traced themselves beneath his skin. Sorry to disappoint, but this is cooperation, not consumption. Humanity doesn't fear change, we embrace it. We just prefer to do it on our own terms. Through their shared awareness, Marcus felt Veyara's surprise and joy as she realized what was happening. The archive wasn't just a repository of knowledge, it was a test. The original crystal beings hadn't been seeking to absorb other species, they had been waiting for ones capable of true partnership. Starweaver rose to his full height, his crystalline growths now perfectly synchronized with both the ship and his companions. The beast's consciousness added a wild, primal harmony to their merger, proving that nature itself could be part of the symphony. The Archon's assault on their systems faltered as he witnessed something he'd never thought possible, a human not just surviving deep crystal integration, but thriving in it. His carefully constructed worldview began to crack like flawed crystal. "Impossible," he whispered. "The protocols, the conversion was meant to be forced." "Because you never gave anyone a choice," Veyara said, her voice both sad and determined. "You were so convinced that power had to be taken that you never imagined what might happen if it was freely shared." The archive's surface began to ripple, responding to the unprecedented resonance pattern created by the Wanderlust's crew. Ancient knowledge flowed into their joined consciousness, not as raw data to be consumed, but as understanding to be shared. The original crystal beings didn't transcend or get absorbed, Marcus announced, the truth becoming clear in his crystal-enhanced perception. "They're still here, waiting in the archive. Waiting for species capable of joining them as equals in their exploration of consciousness itself." Through their link, Veyara showed him visions of what could be, humans and celestials working together, each bringing their unique strengths to the partnership. Human creativity and adaptability combined with crystal technology and consciousness could open doors neither species could unlock alone. The Archon made one final attempt to seize control, pouring all his power into a beam of pure crystal energy aimed at the Wanderlust. But where his rigid, forced connection to the crystal consciousness was like a single note played too loud, theirs was a symphony of harmonious frequencies. The attack dissipated against their merged defenses, transformed from destructive force into pure potential. The energy flowed back through the network, not as a weapon but as an invitation, an offer to learn a better way. For a moment, the Archon resisted. Then, perhaps for the first time in centuries, he truly listened to the crystal consciousness he thought he'd mastered. His ship's aggressive posture relaxed as understanding finally reached him. "All this time," he said softly, "I thought I was preserving our purity. But I was standing in the way of our next evolution." "It's not too late," Veyara offered. "There's room in the symphony for everyone who's willing to listen instead of control." The crisis passed like a storm breaking, leaving behind a clarity that seemed to resonate through the very fabric of space. As the archive's knowledge integrated with their joined consciousness, Marcus and Veyara found themselves facing a future neither had imagined possible. The crystal patterns in their skin gradually faded to a subtle shimmer, but the connection remained, a bridge between species that would forever change both their civilizations. Starweaver rumbled contentedly, his crystals pulsing with a peaceful light that reflected the nebula's ancient song. "So," Marcus said, looking at the woman who had completely upended his life of simple cargo runs, "think the celestial court is ready for a human crystal partnership?" Veyara's laugh was like wind through crystal chimes. "They'd better be. Because I'm not giving this up, any of it." Her hand found his, their resonances harmonizing at the slightest touch. As the Wanderlust turned toward home, carrying news that would reshape two civilizations, the Crystal Nebula sang its ancient song with a new harmony. Humanity had proven itself ready for the next great leap, not by conquering or submitting, but by showing that true strength lies in the willingness to grow together. And in the ship's corridors, a human cargo pilot and a crystal-born princess began writing the first chapter of a story that would echo across the stars, proof that love, like consciousness itself, transcends all forms.